Last year, I took a look at Thea the Awakening and gave it a positive review. It had such a unique concept combining elements of 4X gaming, turn-based combat, text adventure games, survival elements, and even a bit of roguelike thrown in there. Today, we are looking at the sequel called Thea 2 The Shattering. At least it's not called Thea 2 The Quickening, but let's not get too far ahead. Compared to the first game, the sequel appears to have a far more mixed reception. While the core concept remains, many changes were made that proved to be unpopular to fans of the original. Personally, I prefer the original myself, but I still put in over 60 hours within this title. With that said, is this game still worth playing? You start up a game and can choose the deity you will follow. Similar to the first game, 2 deities are unlocked at random. However, 2 of the locked deities can only be unlocked when completing certain quests or achieving a domination victory. Once you pick a god, you can choose your starting units and bonuses. Most of these will need to be unlocked using god points, which are unlocked through gameplay. This is one warning of the grindy nature of this game, but more on that later. Similar to the first game, there are a ton of difficulty options to customize, which is always appreciated. And now begins your journey about X amount of years from the first game. I know this game takes place after the first, but I don't recall how many. You then are given your first quest, which involves cooking some food. You'll also quickly realize that you do not start off with a camp. Instead, you are a completely nomadic. You are given the choice to settle down, but it just doesn't make sense since you'll need to split up your party to do so, as well as all the additional random events that can happen at your settlement. Plus, add the fact that you'll be doing a lot of traveling that it's hard to really find a good place to begin with. Eventually, you'll come across a challenge that will need to be solved using your mental, spiritual, or physical prowess. This brings to one of the biggest major changes, the combat system. There's a lot to unpack here, so let me lay the groundwork. The first game had a simple yet effective system that was easy to learn and rewarding to master. This game, however, tries a completely different approach, making things far more complex than necessary. Instead of being laid out horizontally and cleanly, the game opts for a grid format, which gives me Yu-Gi-Oh vibes for some reason. Honestly, if they just wanted to make this game Yu-Gi-Oh, I actually wouldn't mind very much. So here are the basic rules for the game. Basically, you can either place down your units on the grid or have them cast an ability that does not place them in battle. They can also summon creatures if they have the ability to do so. It's a great way to have folks that aren't a good fit for the challenge to at least be a bit useful. Depending on where the unit is placed and the move performed will determine who or what they can damage. The basic concept is fine, but it gets bogged down by so many additional variables to track that influence turn order, causing damage during spawn, and how long each battle takes. I honestly just stuck to auto resolve as I preferred the simpler but better flowing system of the original. One new feature I really like is how children can now participate in various challenges. This allows for you to shape the kid into however you like before they enter adulthood. Instead of it being random when they grow up, there is a set time for how long they have to develop before becoming an adult. Depending on their stats and a bit of RNG, it will determine what path they can take. Some of these are the expected gather, builder, and warrior, while others can take your characters to very unexpected but beneficial paths. For example, I had one character turn into a Vily of all things, which falls under the category of being a nature demon. I'm not quite sure why that happened or how exactly I caused it, but I appreciate it nonetheless. The quest system from the original game returns as expected, and the writing is still really good. Thea 1 did a great job of establishing the deep lore within, and this game picks up right where it left off. The multiple paths of each quest is still present with a far diverse set of events to experience. Even better, we finally have a female narrator to help with the female voices. Unfortunately, they have her perform some of the male voices as well, which takes me out of the experience. Why the male and female narrators couldn't tag team for the same events, I have no idea. Along with the day and night cycle found in the first game, seasons are now introduced. Depending on the season you are in will determine the benefits and drawbacks. For example, certain vegetables will be easier to harvest in summer, while in winter you consume more fuel. You can also change whether or not the seasons will affect gameplay when adjusting the difficulty, which I definitely appreciate. I chose the game to be in a Pangea format like before, but for some reason I still needed to traverse the game through the sea. Islands are another maligned feature within this game. Before you set out, you'll need to construct an appropriate ship to take your crew on a naval adventure. This makes Thea 2 far more restrictive as each island has a recommended level to traverse through. This makes the game feel far less organic of a world compared to the first. The first game was able to use procedural generation in a way to help the game feel natural in its progression. Here, it's clearly segmented out, making the game feel far less of a journey and far more of a grind. And speaking of building, the crafting system has returned. There are a ton more materials to get this time around, with a higher chance of producing bad quality items depending on what materials you are using. The labor skill of your characters as well as any tools they have equipped will also influence this chance. Most of my time with this game was spent gathering resources and clearing out nests to make sure my characters leveled up enough times to craft something good. Characters themselves also have a bit more to worry about now. There are a ton of attributes in general, but only a select few are necessary for each character depending on their profession and build. They also now have 3 bars to worry about: health, sanity, and spirituality. Having any of these fall below a certain amount can have negative consequences and even have some of them flat out desert. It adds another layer of challenge, but I honestly could have gone without this, as I often have to rest after every battle or perform rituals to get everyone back to form. Speaking more on the grinding aspect, the difficulty is incredibly inconsistent. I will admit that the first game could put you in terrible situations if the RNG gods deemed you unworthy. Here, the main quest line goes from a level 3 challenge to a level 5 or 6 challenge far too often. I end up in situations where I need to just level up enough times before I can proceed to the next area or part in the larger quest. Sure, there are some side quests to accomplish, but some of these will require you to travel across the map via boat to complete. If you don't have the materials to craft a boat, it's back to the grind for you. New to this game is diplomacy, which sounds good on paper, but once again is just something else to grind. If you reach a certain level of diplomacy with a faction, you could obtain new members to add your party and possibly get a very cool blessing. It's a great way to add diversity to your squad, which is something that takes a long time to accomplish. I definitely do like how rewarding getting great relations can be, but it's far too time consuming, especially if your god doesn't carry any sort of benefits for taking a diplomatic route. While destroying a faction or village has its own benefits as well, it will still take a crap ton of time to build up your party to be good enough to pull it off. Similar to the first game, you get a summary of your accomplishments and can use the points to unlock other gods to play as, along with additional bonuses. God points are ultimately pretty scarce, so this will require multiple playthroughs or playing at the hardest difficulty to unlock everything. This once again further adds to the grind factor if you are looking to 100% complete it. I couldn't even fathom going through this so many times, but be my guest if that's your goal. The artwork itself is just one of the many elements that are different compared to the original. Character artwork contains far more color than the original, which I do appreciate. There was definitely something more unique with the black and white art from the previous game, but the art here is still well done. The in-game models and environments are more varied than the original, and I've always liked how the characters in your party are represented on the overworld. The music itself is just fine, as none of the tracks really stick out to me, outside of one for just how bizarre it sounds. Overall, I get the impression that there were just so many things thrown into this game that it ends up feeling a bit bloated and overwhelming. In terms of content, there's far more to explore here from a replay value perspective. Even though I've put in over 60 hours in this game, I still feel like there's a ton more combinations and paths that I have yet to pursue. The problem is almost everything else. The islands make the game far more tedious, the combat is not as good, and the game is just a huge grind. The strong lore and experimental crafting systems do remain, but the game could have been so much more. I personally like to see a third entry in the series, combining elements from both game 1 and 2. Maybe call it Thea 3 The Binding or Thea 3 Full Circle. In the meantime, I recommend for everyone to start with Thea 1 and maybe give Thea 2 a try if you're looking for a bit more. Just know that you'll be in a game that may hit the same notes, albeit in a completely different order. Thank you guys for watching as always, and this is Powerhouse, signing off.